Podcast.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and we're back to the original intro song. It has been since like mid-June since we've heard it, and it's time to bring it back. We're out of our, special months and series. I mean, I guess we are into a new special month of Halloween spooky themed episodes, but I didn't have a special spooky themed song made up for it. I mean, I guess I probably could have put like some theremin or something in the background of like the main one, that whatever, but nah, it's fine. It's not worth it. Anyway, we are into October, and it is, like I said, our spooky little Halloween character themed stories, scary stories that, at least in general, a lot of people think are true. This week we are talking about witches, which, guys, are totally real. Whatever. This is part 2. In case you're wondering, part 1 is all the way back in episode 29, and it was the first ever spooky themed, Halloween-y themed episode that we did. So going into part 2 now, I'm surprised it took us this long. There's so many, you could just go through the Salem witch trials. I don't know why I didn't just do an episode based on the Salem witch trials, but I didn't. But you can go through there and just all of the just unique stories of people who were accused of being witches. I think we have one or two in here from Salem. So we'll get into that. But 5 stories today of Matthew Hopkins, Martha Carrier, Rebecca Nurse, and then we are looking at the Vardo witch trials. And our first story will be of the Bamberg witch trials.
Story time. Story time. Story time. Story time.
Salem, Massachusetts gets a ton of publicity, partly because, it's America. And so, of course, we're going to learn more about American history than European history, but not the only giant witch trial and witch hunt to take place. In fact, Salem, I think, built on a lot of the previous witch trials that had taken place and took what no one else had apparently learned up until this point. And this is one of them. So going back to 1626, when Prince Bishop Johann Georg Fuchs von Dornheim, Jesus Christ, what a name. Prince Bishop Johann Georg Fuchs von Dornheim of Bamberg, Germany, he decided he was going to create a godly state in response to the Protestant Reformation and make the area, quote unquote, devout and conformally Catholic, because that's what Jesus would have wanted, guys. Dornheim's assistant, theologian Frederick Fjorner, believed that Bamberg was not a religiously pure city and that the public trusted folk healers like, quote-unquote, cunning women and little women witches more than the church. When a heavy frost destroyed the entire region's harvest in late May of that year, the church government launched their witch trials to rid the area of all of the witches and return the people back to the obedience of God, because obviously witches killed the crops, not the weather, not an anomaly in the climate for, late spring to have a cold burst of air come through and frost destroying all of the crops. It sucks. Yes. Did witches cause it? No. But also, this is 1626. Science isn't real yet. No one understands how anything works because no one understands basic science. So this obviously began when Katharina Merklaren was arrested and, thanks to a lot of torture, confessed to causing the frost that killed the crops by using witchcraft. So the simple-minded out there be like, yeah, see, dude, She literally admitted that she caused the frost. So obviously she was a witch. Yeah, because she just wanted to stop being tortured. And they were probably like, oh, yes, Mrs. Katarina, we will stop torturing you if you just tell us you made the frost that kills all the crops. We will stop poking your vagina with this iron peg with a very sharp stick. Right up there, squish, squish, squish. Just tell us you brought the frost. And then she's like, yes, please. Yeah, just stop poking my vagina with that really sharp stick. Yeah, I did it. Whatever. If that's what you want me to say, I will say it. And they're like, oh, see, that's all we did. It's just the witches are real. And that's it. Soon, a special witch commission was organized to deal with the onslaught of accusations that flooded in. So, Katharina, she is like, yeah, we found the witch, guys. And then everyone was like, oh, yeah, well, guess what? Linda over here, big witch, the biggest witch of them all. Like, you might want to look into her. And then everyone was just accusing everyone. And so the government literally had to put a commission together to go through all of these accusations. More sensible people who used basic logic were actually banned from criticizing the witch trials, or else they would face whipping and banishment from the city. Friedrich Fjörner, who had assisted other bishops in earlier, less ridiculous, but still super ridiculous witch trials, was tasked with overseeing this entire process. This witch commission was basically given free rein to torture anyone who was accused however they wanted in order to get confessions of anything witchy, including, but not limited to, harmful magic, flying, participating in the witch's Sabbath, desecrating sacred objects, and having sex with Satan or lower-ranking male and female demons. Even after the commission got a confession, they were then encouraged to continue torturing people until they named accomplices or others they had seen practicing witchcraft. So you can see why this is going to blow up in everyone's faces very quickly, right? Those who were named as witches were subsequently arrested and tortured into naming additional people, which exponentially grew the number of accused witches throughout the city of Bamberg. And by the end of 1627, Bishop Dornheim basically had to construct a special witches' prison specifically to house everyone accused of being a witch until they could be vetted or go on trial or be tortured, and just name other people. It's like, here's the sharp vagina poker again, only we are poking your butthole with it because you are a man and you have a penis. So we are poking your ball sack with the sharp vagina poker. We have already heard that you are a witch. Who else is a witch? I don't have any friends. I guess I'm the only witch. Can you stop torturing me? No, we are not going to stop torturing you until you tell us who is. You can't see this right now, but as I'm talking, I'm making a poking gesture with my hand as if I'm just it provides no value to the episode. But anyway, but you get it, right? And so just continue. Okay, fine. My friend Greg, he is also a witch. My boss, Ralph is also a witch. That's it. I have two people in my life. We are witches. That's it. And they're like, okay, thank you, sir. We are going to go arrest Greg and Ralph now. And thank you. You are going to go to the witches' prison. Goodbye. Anyway, you get it, right? Because the commission also just didn't bother actually vetting any of the accusations and instead just arrested everyone all willy-nilly, the poorer working class people actually took this opportunity to, as they're being tortured, they're like, who else do you know that's a witch? They started to name members of the city's elite and their bosses and the socialites in Bamberg, and got them arrested and tortured. In nearby Würzburg, where another set of witch trials were taking place, the majority of the people arrested there were children. So, parents, man, your kids, if you lived, I guess, look, anything's possible today, I guess. Maybe we have another witch trial and you're just tired of your kids and the government comes just hey, who else is witches here? Oh God, my kids. They're definitely witches. Look, they got it from me. They literally came out of my body. So of course they're witches. And so then they would just arrest the kids. George Hahn, a member of the Bamberg City Council and a well-known doctor in the city, openly opposed the witch trials and actually sued Bishop Dornheim through the Imperial Diet in Speyer. When Hahn left Bamberg to attend the trial hearing on December 27, 1627, his wife, Katharina, was arrested for witchcraft. I think it's a different one. After she was accused by the son of Bamberg's mayor, Johannes Junius, whose wife, Eunice's wife, had already been burned alive for being a witch 3 months earlier. So he's out for blood. He's ready to get anybody killed. Katharina Hahn was tortured into a confession and burned alive on January 16th, 1628. A few days later, their daughter was also arrested, tortured, and burned. Again, all while George is like away trying to have this trial to sue the bishop for this nonsense already. And then his family is all arrested and tortured and killed. When Hahn then returned to Bamberg a few weeks later, he was shocked to learn that his wife and daughter had been killed for being witches. And realizing that he was likely going to be next, he enlisted the help of Maximilian I, the Elector of Bavaria, to just give him a job so he can get out of Bamberg. However, the messenger that Maximilian sent to Bamberg to deliver the employment offer was actually prevented from entering the city, thanks in part to the ongoing 30 Years' War. Because, of course, it's Europe. There's going to be a war going on during all of this. Hahn was soon arrested and accused of sorcery by his own son, Adam. Hahn was then executed on July 14th, while Adam, along with his other daughter, were executed the following year. It's ridiculous. As part of George Hahn's torture, he then accused Bamberg Mayor Johannes Junius of being a witch. After Junius was named as an accomplice by another town's mayor who had been accused of being a witch, because they're just going, to the next town over and getting people. Junius was arrested in April of 1628 and vehemently denied all of the accusations. However, again, of course you're going to deny it, but everyone's a witch. So I wonder, here's the thing, man. The real play is let's say you're in a torture room with two of the, whoever is, people of the Witches Commission or whoever's running this, right? And they're like, who else do you know who is a witch? And you just name one of your torturers, but not the other one, and then just watch them turn on each other. That would be hilarious. And maybe it happened. I don't know. But whatever. The mayor of Bamberg, after he was accused of being a witch, even though he denied it, he was arrested, and he was outfitted with thumb screws and leg vices and was given the strappado torture until he eventually confessed 3 months later. In his confession, he claimed that a succubus threatened to kill him unless he renounced his faith in God. And then when he refused to renounce his faith, several demons materialized and began attacking him until he accepted Satan as his God. He then allegedly changed his name to Crix and was given a familiar named Fuchsen. At that point, as many as 27 other townspeople, which he immediately pointed out to the prosecutors, revealed themselves as also being on Satan's team and congratulated him for joining the dark side. Junius then, in his confession, said that he began regularly attending witches' Sabbaths, traveling to each meeting on the back of a giant flying dog. This is the mayor of a major German city, and he has been tortured into this crazy confession. I don't know what he thought would help his case by saying all of this, but he did. He also claimed that the witches and demons commanded him to kill his children, but he refused to do that, and so they beat him. However, he did admit to sacrificing his horse and burying a sacred communion wafer. The horror. Not the sacred communion wafer, bro. Anyway, by 1630, the Bamberg witch trials had finally gotten the attention of Emperor Ferdinand II, who wrote to Bishop Dornheim asking why a wealthy member of a family from Nuremberg, Dorothea Flock, who was also very pregnant at the time, was being tried for witchcraft. Dornheim ignored the emperor's demands to stop the case, which then forced Ferdinand to have Pope Urban VII intervene. Despite issuing an imperial edict that the prosecutors definitely knew about, Dornheim and his cronies, I guess, went ahead and executed this pregnant woman 30 minutes before the messenger arrived with the official edict. Following the Pope's edict, the German government launched an investigation into the witch trials and even suffered an invasion by the Swedish army, who had decided to take matters into their own hands and stop all of this foolishness. By then, Friedrich Fjörner had died, and people began realizing that everyone would eventually end up being accused of being a witch and executed. Like, they were literally just going to kill themselves and, wipe themselves off the map. When local peasants began refusing to supply wood for these executions, Bishop Dornheim ordered the commission to stop arresting people. In 1631, Emperor Ferdinand appointed Anton Winter, a staunch opponent of witch trials in general, to be the leader of the Witch Commission, which that's perfect. In response, Bishop Dornheim fled Bamberg and went to Austria while all of the other prisoners were released. Although the trials in Bamberg came to an end, other smaller witch trials continued throughout the region all the way to 1680. In all, about 1,000 people were killed in Bamberg alone during the 6 years that their witch trials took place. So yeah, it's real silly. It's one of the reasons why I have no desire to go to Germany. Like, other than like the obvious, but like, I don't know, just a lot of silly people over there. Moving on to Matthew Hopkins. Little is known about his early life, but what little is available just isn't really important, honestly. His story really begins after the Lancaster witch trials in England in 1634, when he and John Stern were ordered by King Charles I's physician to perform a physical examination of 4 women who had been accused of witchcraft. Now, the problem with this, among many, was that neither Hopkins nor Stern were doctors. They were just simply looking to see if there was any evidence that the accused had made a covenant with the devil, that these women had made a covenant. And so how would that be? Well, the most common one was that if someone had made a covenant with the devil, they would have what was known as the witch's tit, which was basically like a third nipple, essentially is all it was. Well, Hopkins loved looking for third nips so much that following the Lancaster witch trials, he and Stern traveled to East Anglia in the eastern part of England, where witches were just running wild, and became witch hunters. He immediately accused 23 women of witchcraft in Chelmsford. And because England was also in the middle of a civil war at this point, Hopkins wasn't able to conduct a formal trial. So instead, he recruited justices of the peace and had 19 of the 23 women convicted. The other 4 died in prison before they even could make it to trial. So he and John Stern show up to this town and just points out immediately 23 women. Oh, you're all witches. You go into trial. Why he's Australian? I don't know. I can never get the British accent, and it's so frustrating. Either way, in 1644, Hopkins spied on a group of witches and heard them mention the name of a local woman. Hopkins immediately went out and arrested her and then deprived her of sleep for 4 days until she confessed that she was a witch. She also claimed to have several familiars, which I said familiar in the previous story. It's basically just a demon that obeys the witch. It's just like your little personal assistant, if you're a witch, I guess. She said that the names of her familiars were Jarmara, Vinegar Tom, Elamanzer, Pyewacket, Peckin the Crown, Grizzle, and Greedagut. Great names. Following the woman's trial, Hopkins, Stern, and a woman they hired to do the pricking, which was this act of pricking a suspected witch's finger to see if they actually bled or felt pain. They then just traveled all over Eastern England. And this should become a movie, right? This has a Tim Burton style vibe to it. Just this witch hunting crew going around and just picking up random women and accusing them of being a witch and then torturing them. This group claimed that Parliament had commissioned them to hunt for witches, and Hopkins said that they were paid 20 shillings per town plus traveling expenses. I don't know if that's true or not. He began costing each town so much money that the town of Ipswich had to enact a new local tax just to cover his work. Not to kick him out, not to issue any sort of ordinance to kick him out, but to actually keep paying him and to collect more taxes to pay. Because, again, witches are everywhere, man. In these towns, they're just showing up to these towns and just oh, yeah, we do have a witch problem. Thank you guys so much. The Parliament knows best. So, yeah, it's 20 shillings to come in and do that. I don't know how much a shilling is. But apparently it's a lot if a town doesn't have 20 of them. So, man, the economy is really struggling out there. So anyway, Hopkins and his team employed several methods of extracting confessions, very scientifically proven ways of figuring out if you're a witch or not. Some of these methods, including the swimming test, which those who floated were deemed to be witches because water's scientific properties forced it to reject witches. According to them, the logic being that a witch would have renounced her baptism, thus rejecting water as a whole. And therefore, if you throw a witch in water, they would sink or they would float because water would prevent from being, I don't know, man. It's real stupid. They would also cut the arm with a blunt knife. And if the woman did not bleed, then she was a witch. Well, of course, like go cut anybody with a butter knife. They're not going to bleed. So everyone's a witch. They would also do pricking, in which the witch's familiar would then appear and drink the blood. That to me, that's like, that was probably the least effective for them, because you prick someone and if they start bleeding and no one appears to drink the blood, then they're not a witch. So like that one probably wasn't as fun for them to do. Despite a little bit of pushback on this, Hopkins and his team were generally left to go about their work because witches were just this gigantic problem in 1600s England. He published a book, The Discovery of Witches, in 1647, and much of its content was recommended to be included in law books. That's comforting. Also, this book was largely influential in the first witch trials in America. Shortly after the book's publication, Hopkins died of tuberculosis, thus ending the witch hunt in England. He and his team were ultimately credited with executing 300 alleged witches in the 3 years they traveled throughout East Anglia. Moving on to September 2nd, 1662, when Dorothy Lurit's daughter, she was brought to the Vardo fortress in the small northern Norwegian village of Vardo by her own father, claiming that she had bewitched and killed 2 of his servants. Allegedly, Dorothy had led a coven of 4 other witches who shapeshifted into a dove, eagle, crow, and swan and opened wind knots on the sea in an attempt to sink a boat. However, their plot failed when the crew prayed to God. Now, that story alone, that her dad just made up for the most part, that was enough evidence for the court to find Dorothy guilty and burn her at the stake 2 months later. Dorothy's conviction then opened this wave of panic and belief that witches were all around Vardo. Following 4 additional executions, Ingeborg and Karen Iversdatter, I got to say it like that, I'm sorry, 2 8-year-old daughters of one of the women who had been executed, were questioned about their experiences as witches. They were held in the fortresses. I'm not even going to pronounce this word. I can't believe I wrote this down. The fortresses Trollkvinnefingeselhalet. Norway, what are we doing with our words? Trollkvinnefingeselhalet. Anyway, it's the witch's hole, because that's a thing that fortresses have, apparently. These 8-year-old girls struggled to recite scripture, leading authorities to believe that the girls were super evil, and not at all because they were 8 years old and likely lacked a proper education. I mean, I remember being 8 years old. I could probably not properly recite scripture, and we had to memorize that every single week. There was a Bible passage that we had to memorize every single week. And on Friday in Bible class, we all had to go up to our teacher and recite the passage in order to get, the passing grade or whatever. Every single week. That unlocked a core memory for me. I haven't thought about that in years. And yeah, that's what we had to do. And it wasn't just like a verse either. I mean, it was like 10 verses, at a time. Just like whole passages in King James, by the way, which is not like regular English to understand. I don't remember any of it. That's probably good. Anyway, Ingeborg later confessed, under a lot of pressure, of course, that she had celebrated Christmas with 2 accused witches. She also said that she and another girl had transformed themselves into cats and crawled through the fortress gate to meet 2 other witches who had just flown in on their brooms, I guess, from another town. Even more, Satan himself held a candlelight for them while they all got drunk on wine. Other accused women actually backed up this story and claimed that the entire coven had held a Sabbath celebration at a mountain in southern Norway and that Satan had appeared to them as a black dog. Another girl whose mother and aunt had already been executed for being a witch, this girl, a 12-year-old Maren Olsdottir, claimed to have visited hell and received a guided tour by Satan. Oh, God. She claimed that she saw water in a black valley that boiled every time Satan blew fire from his iron horn. That sounds so metal. He also flash cooked a ham right in front of her for some reason. Like, it's got to be, like, what kind of tour is this? He was like, hello, Maren. Welcome to hell. Let me give you a nice little tour here. As you see, we have the lake of fire, and you can see all of the worst people in the world. There's Judas, and there's some of the old Babylonian and Persian kings that tortured the Jews, some of my favorites. Moving on now. Hold on just a second. It is noon. Right on the dot. Let me pull out my iron horn and Ah, yes, you see that? It's very nice, isn't it? Yes. And moving on here now, we're going to the valley of the shadow of death. And as this water, it's not really water there, Maren. Now, don't get confused. It's black and Satan-y. It's also, oh, goodness, I did say it was noon, wasn't it? I am famished. How about a ham? I'm going to just flash cooked right there. Nice pearly honey-baked ham for you. Now, don't fill up on... This is so dumb. It's so... And people were just like, oh, yeah, that's all really happened. This isn't just someone's imagination at all. This is all 100% true. Maren, this 12-year-old girl, continued and claimed to have attended the same Sabbath service and saw Satan playing music with a red violin and giving everyone beer. When the court asked who else was there at this service, she named 5 others who were immediately arrested and brought in for questioning. One woman, Ingeborg Krog, was waterboarded and tortured into a confession and eventually relented that she had eaten a fish given to her by a woman who had previously been executed for witchcraft and surmised that she must have received this evil magic from the fish. Within a few weeks, practically every woman in this village turned on each other and gave similarly outlandish stories to authorities about everyone being a witch. By June of 1663, it was finally revealed that most of these women had been forced to either lie or were coerced into making up stories, obviously, about everyone else. In all, though, 91 women in Vardo were sentenced to death for being witches, even though none of them actually were. Anyway, going on here, final 2 stories here. Rebecca Nurse was born on February 13th, 1621 in Great Yarmouth, England. Her family soon immigrated to the Massachusetts Bay Colony, where Rebecca eventually married Francis Nurse, a tray maker, whatever that was, and the village's constable. The couple ended up having 8 children together, and Rebecca ultimately earned a reputation for being one of the most pious members of the community, which, that's something that those pilgrims put a ton of importance on. Well, on March 23rd, 1692, an arrest warrant was issued for Rebecca after Edward and John Putnam accused her of being a witch. Nurse, who was 71 at this point, and honestly, just a miracle to still be alive. 71 for a woman in 1692, that is ancient. She quickly asserted her innocence, and even the rest of Salem, Massachusetts, thought that the accusations against Nurse were pretty ridiculous and came to her defense, including 39 prominent members of the community who all signed a petition on her behalf. Now, as was tradition, Rebecca then represented herself in court because no Puritan lawyer was going to take a risk defending an actual witch, even though a lot of people were like, this is the nicest, just softest, most sweetest old lady. That's the worst way to butcher that sentence, but you get what I'm saying. But no lawyer was like, I can't, I'm not going to take a chance. However, several people also testified in her defense, even though Edward and John Putnam often broke into fits in the courtroom and claimed that Rebecca was using her devil witch magic to torture them in that moment. Not surprisingly, the courts used those fits as quote-unquote spectral evidence and claimed that it was proof that Satan was tormenting people in the village. Not necessarily from Rebecca, but that just to add fuel to the witch trials that were already taking place. Now, shockingly, Rebecca Nurse was found not guilty. However, the Putnams and some other people continued to act silly and accuse Rebecca of tormenting them, ultimately forcing the jury to take a second look at the case. In the retrial, the jury asked Rebecca Nurse about Deliverance Hobbs, a convicted witch that Rebecca said was in her company, was like acquaintances with. And because Rebecca was basically deaf at this point, because again, she's a really old lady, like 71 in 1692 is probably like 115 today. Just a walking corpse at this point. And so she's nearly deaf, sitting in this trial again. She misunderstood the question, and the way she answered it implicated herself as being a witch. And so on July 19th, the jury changed their decision and sentenced this old lady to death. Despite a letter of reprieve from Sir William Phipps, the governor of Massachusetts at the time, the sentence was upheld and Nurse was hanged. Although her body was tossed in a shallow grave, her family returned in the middle of the night, exhumed her body, and buried her on the family's homestead. Fun fact also, Rebecca Nurse is a direct ancestor of both Mitt Romney and Lucille Ball. So there you go. Their old ancestor was executed for being a witch. Final story here is of Martha Ingalls Allen, who was born in Andover, Massachusetts at some point between 1643 and 1650, because who needs accurate record keeping? On May 7th, 1674, Martha married Thomas Carrier. She was 7 months pregnant at the time, which was absolutely strike one in early New England. The new couple relocated to Billerica, where they started having a litter of children, as you do back then. When they returned to Andover in 1688, practically everyone caught smallpox. Martha's father, her two brothers, and two of her children died. Residents of Andover were convinced that Martha's family had brought the disease to town when they moved back, and town leaders actually barred the family from entering any public place. And again, that's strike two, all right? Pregnant, out of wedlock, strike one, whore. And then you're going to move back to town and bring smallpox with you, strike two. 4 years later, the Salem girls, who made a living performing around Essex County and accusing people of being witches, accused Martha of witchcraft. Specifically, Martha was accused of leading an army of 300 witches, using her satanic powers to bring terrible diseases through the area on her way to becoming the Queen of Hell. And of course, that was strike three. Although Martha denied these accusations, she was arrested on May 28, 1692. Her neighbor, Benjamin Abbott, immediately came forward and affirmed this accusation, claiming that Martha had cursed him with an illness after the two had gotten into a land dispute. Her surviving children were sent to prison with her in hopes that it would coerce a confession, but Martha maintained her innocence. Her trial began 3 days later. So, on May 31st, Martha was transported to Salem to face the Salem girls, this band of girls who were just going around accusing people of witches, basically causing the Salem witch trials. Because literally no one was smart enough to consider that these girls were acting and playing around, the trial proceeded with several witnesses coming forward to show how Martha's witchcraft had affected their lives. One man blamed her for losing a fist fight with his own son. That sounds like a very Boston thing. Her own nephew blamed the death of two of his cattle on her, and another woman claimed that the two had ridden into town on a broom together. Reverend Cotton Mather, who considered no other alternative through the entire period of the Salem witch trials and just assumed that every woman ever was a witch, pointed to the testimony of Martha's 7-year-old daughter, who claimed that Martha had made her become a witch because children don't lie. And so, of course, we're going to consider this. Cotton Mather, by the way, we spent a lot of time in school learning about Cotton Mather. Not even about the Salem witch trials, but like my school curriculum thought Cotton Mather was this amazing preacher who did so much for the Massachusetts colony. This dude was a dingling, and he's going around and affirming all of these witch trials, taking testimony from children. It's like, yeah, my mama made me a witch. No, she didn't. And sure, Martha's daughter was hung by her heels in the prison cell until she blurted out whatever interrogators wanted to hear. But that's beside the point. All right? Despite adamantly and defiantly asserting her innocence, Martha and 5 other women were found guilty of witchcraft and sentenced to hanging. On August 19th, Martha was taken to Gallows Hill through a procession of cheering crowds, and then after her hanging, was buried in a shallow grave. The Massachusetts government did apologize for her hanging in 1711, offering £7 and 6 shillings as recompense. However, rather than outright clearing Martha's name, they simply changed the charge to independence of mind and unsubmissive character, which is like, I don't know what's worse. Hanging someone for being accused of being a witch or executing a woman because of independence of mind and unsubmissive character. That's that's Handmaid's Tale level right there. All right, part 2 of some stories about witches in the books. Let us recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number 1, Bamberg, Germany, a pretty good-sized city. Over 1,000 people executed for being a witch because their entire process for figuring out who's a witch was to make you name people as they're torturing you. It's like, hey, tell us you're a witch. Great, thanks for that. Also, we're going to keep torturing you until you tell us more people that you know we know you know other people who are witches. And God, I wish they just turned that around on their executions. Like, I'm going to name you. I know you're a witch, buddy. And then just watch everything implode. Number 2, Matthew Hopkins and his little witch hunting gang just showing up all around England and executed 300 women who were definitely not witches, but they were just like, you're a witch. Throw you in the river, see if you float. And then they don't. Probably because they tied. Or, I don't know. I don't know how they would figure that out. Anyway, you get it. And then number 3, Salem witch trials. Rebecca Nurse just executed an old lady, just an old deaf lady, because she's like, what? I did. Oh yeah, that sounded good enough. Let's throw her up on the gallows, boys. God, people are stupid.
What did we learn?
Next week on the show, Halloween-themed episodes continue with the 4th version of some ghost stories. We are looking at the Cock Lane ghost and stories. I'm a child. And also the stories of Thomas Millwood and Katie King. Were they real ghosts, or was it just some shenanigans afoot? We'll see. It's all in England. It's probably some shenanigans. So, thank you so much for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird.
This is a podcast